Welcome to part 2 of my junk journal tree. What are you seeing today? On one hand, some instructions or tutorials on how to design the cover, how I combine different things, and on the other hand, also some other things that I've made already with my signatures, but which are not finished yet. I have already shown some instructions on my channel on how I make my paper, how I made stickers, and how I changed mirror cardstock, for example, in order to use them afterwards. Some of those things are used here. I also show some tools and materials that you may not be familiar with it. If you don't want to miss such instructions and tips and tricks anymore, please subscribe to my channel. And now have fun with my video part 2. Perhaps you may remember this embossed paper in part 1 of my video. I embossed it with black watercolor paper and with an embossing folder by Tonic Studios. And then afterwards I used wax pastes, and these were from Pen Art in gold and in red. And this is one thing I made with modeling paste, and I used a DinA 4 mold by Stamperia, and I colored it black, and I also used these wax paste by Pen Art, and I show you now which different colors I used for my texture pastes. No, it is not a texture paste, it is the modeling paste, and you have to wait, I think, more than 24 hours. When it is completely dry, you can color it, you can cut it, and you can use these very interesting wax paste. This is a chameleon one, and it is very interesting to use it on black materials. I want to connect this black page to the paper I prepared before. And I have now my cover here, and now I want to show you what I've done so far. The tree is still not glued, but I had glued, of course, black tissue paper to the cardboard, and this results in this gives a result like a special structure. And I also treated the raised areas with Pen Art wax paste. This one was a bronze one. This is how I want to arrange these different layers. I deliberately used different colors to create a small contrast. The red wax paste and bronze go well together. These are warm colors and they harmonize quite well. I'm going to glue that down, and underneath I'm going to glue a ribbon for the closure. Of course, everything has to dry very well afterwards, but takes a while. Here I briefly show a few intermediate steps. Here I have already placed my magnet for my closure, and I didn't quite get it the way I wanted. I had actually glued a large metal disc invisible under the magnet, under the paper. The disc is perhaps 1.5 inches big, but it didn't work the way I imagined it, and the closure wasn't like I planned it. Maybe the paper is too thick, and that's why I decided to stick this little magnet on top of the paper. I think it is perhaps safer for my construction. Now you can see my ribbon. This is the ribbon I choose for my closure. In this photo one is the back of my ribbon, and I glued another magnet on my ribbon. This magnet is part of my closure. In the meantime, I haven't been able to film as much as I originally planned. That's why I can't show all the individual steps, but I'll explain briefly what I did. I've glued the tree together and I glued it on the cover, and before I painted it with different acrylic paints. With black, brown and a hint of red also was included. I used, by the way, the acrylic paints by Stamperia. I used the dry brush technique, and on the leaves I the leaves I painted with gold acrylic paint. And I also painted the snail. It looks a little bit reddish. As you can see now easily, a lot has happened in the background. I treated the leaves with wax paste, which I had previously applied with glossy gel and a stencil from 13 at Arts. Then I decided to use a rub-on pigment. In this case, I used the color Dragon Eye. This gives great shiny effects on smooth surfaces, such as glossy gel or embossing powder or dipping paint. It is a very great way to have nice effects. I took some photos, but now I want to make a little film, and now you can see the different steps I made before, and you can better see what has happened so far. I also added these leaves. I made these leaves with a mold by Stamperia. The small sign with the inscription journal is also made out of a mold from Stamperia. I used Hearty. I let it dry and then painted it. Yeah, and now you can see I painted also some leaves in red, and you have a little wave. I don't want to use too much red on my cover, but it has now a harmony on my page and a little movement. Here again is my little snail, and I used wax paste on it, also on my little rabbit, and I made it on my own because there is no mold for it. And this is now my closure and the magnet, and this is now the way I want to have my closure. This is the simple way. I know that I have many pages for my album, and I know me. I put a lot of things in it, and I want to have a very special closure for my album. And I have now a mold, a leaf, and I painted it on the backside with red acrylic paint, and it is not really dry now, so I can show you it in the camera like this. And there is also the magnet inside, and the plan is that I can put the leaf on this part of the magnet, and I can easily use my ribbon to make the opening bigger and smaller. I hope it makes sense and you can understand what I mean. I can make it very small, and of course I make the ribbon longer, and I put the magnet on, and I have a bigger opening for my pages. That was the special thing I had come up with my album. I think using a leaf as a closure is very appropriate for an album with a tree. At first I only had the leaf white on the back, and of course I didn't like it like that, and at the end I painted it in the beautiful red color. As I said, I used Stamperia acrylic paints. I mean, they have high pigmentation and cover very well. You don't really need much. I hadn't had such good experiences with another color from another company. It didn't cover well, and that was a little bit frustrating for me. I've had very good experiences with the paints from Stamperia on this project, and I'm really thrilled. But everyone has his own or her own experiences and preferences. You naturally take what you have and what you prefer. I only give my own opinion. First of all, I painted my leaves gold, and when I used a gel, it is like a varnish, and it is black and has gold pigments inside, but I think it was too dark for my leaves. And so I used again red acrylic paint and put it on my leaves, and I took a towel, a paper towel, and made it a little bit wet and took away the color again, the paint again. I painted some of the leaves red. I've said that already before, but I just wanted to quickly explain why I did it. The little bunny is looking up, and I wanted him to be looking at something. Originally, I wanted to glue a little sculptured bird into the tree, a handmade bird, but I must say, it was so ugly that I couldn't finish it. No, it was horrible. That's why I brought a movement into the tree with the red leaves, red leaves, which the little rabbit can now follow with his eyes when he has something to watch. I've gotten that far, but I think something's still missing above. I don't really have an idea yet. It happened so spontaneously with the leaves. I might need a good idea for the edges and the frame. Maybe something red. I'm not sure yet. Sometimes it's also good to put things aside and then after a while to approach them again with a new perspective. Yeah, and I said now that I need perhaps some time to think over my cover and things I want to put inside.
Bevor ich jetzt den nächsten Teil meines Videos einblende, möchte ich kurz erklären, für euch ist das jetzt nur eine Sekunde, aber für mich lagen da jetzt mehrere Wochen dazwischen.
I have to wait to make my
euch Spaß macht,
next pages, my cover and all the things. And for you, these are only a few seconds, but for me, there was an interruption of many weeks. And yeah, I had to explain that for you. Now I finally want to show you something about the inner working, the inner pages. Nothing is sewn yet and nothing is really finished, but I wanted to give you a small impression. This piece, for example, I want on the left side as a pocket. This part was created from leftovers. I still have to stick something behind. Otherwise, it could happen that something gets caught when you want to insert text or papers. And yeah, here you can see that it is not a normal paper. Yeah. And I think it is a nice result and I can really use it in this album. I used these punches to make the papers. I cut out leaves from my leftover pieces and glued them on top of each other. The smaller puncher is by Tim Holtz. The sheets are very small but extremely useful if you want to use up leftover papers. And I think we always have a lot of scraps. I like to use leftover paper techniques very much. I layered everything. I also used circles and scraps of lace. I glued everything together and then painted it over with black gesso. Afterwards, I started with acrylic paint and brushed on everything using the dry brush technique. The shimmer comes from a special color from Liquitex. I call the medium that way because it's actually not a color, not a paint. As an addition to acrylic paints, it gives the color a very nice shimmer. This even works on gesso, when the black gesso shimmers beautifully on the treated areas. The acrylic paints are usually matte, but if you add a bit of Liquitex to it or brush it over with Liquitex, it comes out as you see it on the picture. Shiny and a little bit shimmery. I like these effects, and of course I have also some little embellishments, and I have my Nouveau drops, and I painted in this way the leaf with my red Nouveau drop. You can also paint with it. And yeah, mica paste I also use. It is a gold shimmery one, and as you can see, I had red. I think the color is Festive Berries, and also the gold one by Nouveau. You can see very well here that I haven't glued anything in yet. On this black paper I tried a stamp. I used antique linen, of course distress oxides for stamping. Again I used mica paste, and the sheet, the leaf is self-made. It is one of my stickers. I have also a video on my channel about this. The paper is, by the way, from Ciao Bella. The name of the paper is The Sound of Autumn. I briefly fade in the punch I used, the dye I used. It's from Tonic Studios, actually intended for Christmas things, but you can also use them very well throughout the year. Sometimes you have to think outside of the box. I used my handmade paper, of course. I also use the inner parts of my things I cut out with my die cutting machine, as you can see. And I used the inside also later on in my album. I also decorated these papers myself. I've already shown how to do this in a video on my channel. I used a jelly plate and distress oxides and many things. For this paper with a wood look, I can tell you that you can produce it in various ways. I've already shown in a video how you can do it with very simple, with a simple scoring board and ink. However, this is done very differently. I used a special tool, and I'll show you now my tool, and of course modeling paste. And yeah, you have to put your modeling paste on the paper and move this tool like this. And then you have the structure of the wood on your paper. Of course, you have to dry it very well. And then you can paint it and make your own tree. I applied this to a leftover piece of cardboard and then had some trouble finding the right color for the tree trunk. It took a while, but eventually it was finished. I added a small slit here, I used a cutter knife. It should look like it's a hole in the tree, when you can hide letters or small tags in it, or maybe a secret message, what you want. Below I cut out a small hedgehog and made small bags with the ornaments. You can exchange that too. The trunk is glued on the paper as a belly band so that something fits behind this tree. I hid some text behind, and a small tool can do a lot of things, I think. I still wanted to show that this is the bottle of Liquitex I previously reported on. I used it for the effect in front. It's called Liquitex Acrylic Medium, Iridescent Medium. I like that very much. Maybe that is interesting also for you. To repeat, you can mix it with the paint or you can brush it over the paint. I did the one, I painted later on the Liquitex on my acrylic paint. Here I show you my papers. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to put all these papers together. I haven't decided yet which paper I use in which signature. I also had some other projects to finish beforehand, and this album is taking longer than usual. I used the Tonic Studios die again at this point. There is of course the big one that I used in the front and the smaller one that I used here. The dies are versatile and you can really do a lot of different things with them. In this case, I also cut out the door from black paper with an embroidered edge. With an extra piece of paper, I glued it here. So I can open the door and I can put a tag or something written or a little letter, what you want you can put behind. I don't know if I want to leave a dog as a tag at this point. Actually, he seems a bit lost to me. Here I only glued the sides in 3 places, on the right, the bottom and on the left side, so that pocket is still open at the top and you can put things behind. I really didn't want to glue the sides too much, but on the back you can still see the beautiful structure of my wooden paper that I made myself. Also here is one of my stickers which I stuck on as a small pocket, so you can put this card here, for example. Incidentally, this tree trunk was also processed with this tool. No, actually I worked the paper with modeling paste and then with the tool. That was great fun. Maybe you should try that too. Of course, I painted it again with acrylic paints and with wax paste, also with a rosé gold one. And here I have a few papers which are not ready, but I have time to work in my album. On this page I used a piece of paper that I had embellished from wrapping paper, and I put a small bag on it and a detail is already finished. Yeah, and this is the other side of my page. I can sew it together, but I left a little more space between because I know my album will be a little bit thicker than perhaps a normal album. I could also glue the circle here, but since I'm not sure yet, it's loose in the album for now. Maybe I'll stick some more sheets around or leaves, I don't know. It's a process of creation. Often you start and then it becomes completely different than you perhaps imagined. Here is another wooden paper. If you run with your finger over these areas, you feel that it is embossed. That took these embossed lines, took the dark color very well. The embossed areas come from the scoring board. Sometimes there was already something on the paper. When I edited with the folding tool, with the scoring board, finally I also used stencils. I think this is the paper as an example where I started with a stamp color, with a stamp ink, and then added a next layer with distress oxides over it, and both colors mixed very well together, and of course the paper was darker. This is now the third signature, and I used different stencils and also stamps by Lavinia. I used the stamps by Lavinia for my jelly plate. I put the print on the jelly plate and had a very lovely monoprint. And this card, how I made it, there is also another video on my channel. Yeah, and here I have a very nice embellishment, a pocket, and I used an embossing folder and these little embellishments. The one on the top is from Tonic Studios, and I also glued the leftovers from the paper on my tag. And this is an empresslet. I used mirror cardstock, but before I used the mirror cardstock, I covered it with my alcohol inks and made a new color. You can also watch it on my channel. I have a video for this special thing. On this page I came up with something else. I used the packaging for this ornament. The thing that shines so beautifully is a simple packaging paper. I was lucky, it was just the right size. In the background I used paper that was left over, and also the fox is left over. On the back you can see that I used 2 strips from my black paper, and I use it now for my folding mechanism. Under the first door there is directly the next one, the next door. And I made it with, of course, a die by Tonic Studios, and I made a half cut. And I didn't put the acrylic plate completely on the die, and so you have only the cutting area where you want it, and you have a really nice little door. Also, this little card would really fit together with this paper. I think the colors are nearly exactly the same. And on the last page I have a hedgehog, but I don't know if I really use my hedgehog in my album. It is also made with a packaging paper, and I cut it twice. I have the black one and also the colored one, and I cut it in 2 halves and glued it together on my packaging paper, and it was ready. As you can see, I made little pockets, and these papers are from Ciao Bella. the sound of autumn in this case, and I have place for tags, and here I have a little flap, and you can read the year's loveliest last smile. Yeah, that is autumn. Very nice, I think. Yes, and also the dog is beautiful, and you can close your flap with this little tag, and so you don't have problems with your pages. I had so many plans to make this album, and I had so many plans to put new papers inside, and yeah, the time was my problem. But I hope these little steps were interesting for you, and I hope you enjoyed my video. Here I have, by the way, 2 of my hedgehogs because I used the die twice with the black paper and with the colored paper, and you can cut the pieces at this little line and then glue it together. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to make all these things, and I really enjoyed it, and perhaps there are also some techniques or materials which are also useful for your album. And yeah, if you have any questions, please write it underneath my video or a little comment as you like, and I will answer as soon as possible. Yeah, and this was it for now, and I must say thank you very much for watching my video, and yeah, I hope you to see you soon again. I try my very best to make also English videos, but yeah, I have to spend a lot of time with my voiceovers, and I hope everything is understandable for you. I know it is always easier to follow the steps when you understand the language, and when I'm talking German, for English speaker that is boring and of course not very helpful. I understand that. Okay, and for now I wish you a very creative day, have fun, and I hope to see you soon. Bye!